Welcome back to Infant Mental Health Promotion's video series, Infant Mental Health from the Bench. I'm Cheryl Jackson. In Module 3, the Smiths are heading back to court after their children were apprehended by the Children's Aid Society.
Tremendous emotion. Look at this.
Who does this deal? Take on, get out of here.
You break it, Thomas. You better tap.
Order in court, all rise. Justice Stone presiding. You may be seated. Court is now in session.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good afternoon. When we left off 2 weeks ago, an assessment was ordered for the children and temporary nesting arrangements were made. There has been a change, Ms. Levesey?
Yes, Your Honor. An incident was reported on October the 26th by the police to the Children's Aid Society. They attended the home following a domestic dispute. After the investigation, the children were apprehended and placed in the care of the Children's Aid due to concerns for their safety.
Your Honor, my client is trying to get help.
Counsel, I'm very happy to hear that. I see that there has been access since this occurred 5 days ago. Unfortunately, I see in the material that the access visit after the children were apprehended was concerning to child welfare. I would like to see a parent incapacity assessment. We have a motion to keep the children in care, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Your Honor, we'd like to oppose this motion.
We will adjourn this motion for 3 weeks, and I will grant temporary custody to the society. I'd like to see trauma assessments and developmental screening of the children as well. Court adjourned.
All rise. Our panel is here to discuss what we've just seen. Joining me is Judy Cameron, June Maresca, Donna Gray, Brenda Packard, and Jean Clinton. Jean, we've been talking about neglect. Can the impact of neglect be fixed, so to speak, later in life?
You know, it's a very important question, and as a child psychiatrist, one that I have to think a lot about. Of course, our goal as a civic society is not to have it happen and have all the education and support. What we do know is story after story after story of children from child welfare, foster care, who came across one caring adult who saw in them their strengths, their abilities, help them thrive, and it changed their lives. We know many, many stories like that. The issue is that we have no clue which are the children who are going to have that kind of response. Who are the children who are not going to have that kind of response. So we have to work under the operating and guiding principle that all children will suffer significant negative consequences when neglect is present. Let's find a caring adult who can support and mitigate, battle against some of those negatives.
Brenda, can that neglect have a permanent impact on a child's outcomes if nothing's done?
Well, absolutely, and I think what's happened in child welfare is that we see a large cohort of children who are leaving foster care or leaving group care, and for them, life has not moved on the way it should have, and they really have not done well in relationships. There's been educational challenges. And as Jean said, if someone took an interest in them, or they had one foster parent or even a group care staff who took an interest, was able to help them, they end up devoting a lot of energy to moving from crisis to crisis and being hypervigilant about their surroundings, and they aren't able to put that into developing relationships, developing self-regulation, all the kinds of things that they should have been doing when they were younger. And we do then move on to parents who are victims of this as well, that they were not able to have a successful relationship when they were younger. They move on to a series of unsuccessful relationships, crisis to crisis, and that the whole thing starts again. And when they have children, they're not able to respond in a sensitive way to their children because no one responded to them.
June, as we've just heard, often the neglect a young child experiences is rooted in the experiences of the parents, right? And so judges may give families time to repair or fix their own issues, but during that time, the child may still be with the family or removed and required to have access visits. So in light of the science, what kinds of steps can judges take to mitigate?
Well, I think it depends on, first of all, what kind of proceeding you're in and what stage of the proceeding that you're at. If you are dealing with a child protection case and it is early in the proceeding, then one of the first questions you may want to ask as a judge is, okay, who is this child's eyes light up person? Who is in this child's life who can provide that, either whether the child is at home and the parents are, excuse me, trying to learn how to regroup and redo what they do, or whether the child is in a foster home or some other kind of caregiving situation, maybe with kin. Who is that person who is going to be there for that child? That's, I think, a critical question that a judge can ask.
Donna, do you have anything to add to that? What steps can be taken to buffer the trauma?
Well, I think that it's important to, again, as Justice Maresca said, involve kin and people that are important in that child's life. And I don't think we do enough of that because often we're concerned because we haven't had the opportunity to assess alternative caregivers or alternative people that could provide that buffering role. I think it's really important to be asking questions of people that are involved with the child at daycare, in schools, consider the responses of the child to the access that is being provided. And I think it's also really important to be placing more weight on the evidence of social workers that are trained and experienced in the area, because we don't always have easy access to expert clinical information. So I think that that should be something that's considered as well in terms of their expertise, their particular expertise.
And in fact, I think it's something that parents worry about very much. And it becomes very difficult for a parent who is in that situation to see their infant or their toddler developing an attachment relationship with a foster parent, and they feel very threatened about that. So one of the things that we may need to do as those who respond to these cases is to assist the parent in being able to support that kind of attachment and that kind of bond without feeling threatened. And I'm not sure that we do a very good job of that right now. And especially if there's access that's going on, a parent can start to undermine that attachment building if they're not buying into it.
June, what kinds of information would be helpful to a judge in an effort to understand the type of trauma a decision may have?
I think, first of all, I think this kind of education is critical. That I think judges need to have information so that they'll know what kinds of questions to ask. And having that framework for analyzing and looking at the information that's coming before you is critical. In that way, if you are dealing with people who don't have lawyers, or if you don't have an assessment, you don't have the luxury of being able to say, I'm going to get an assessment or do a some kind of a check on the infant or the toddler, at least what we have to do is know the questions to ask. So that's, I think this kind of education is absolutely essential. And then from there, if the information isn't forthcoming, then we need to ask for it. We need to ask questions of the parents. We need to ask questions of the workers who are involved. We need to send infants to have regular checkups in terms of wellness. and their own development so that we can assess where that child is and see whether what we've tried to put into place is good for this kid or not good for this kid.
Could I just add, I think it is really important to focus on the actual child before the court, because so often, especially when there's a sibling group, one access order isn't always going to be the right access order for all the children involved, and often it's more expedient to say access at the discretion of the society once, twice a week for the children. And it may not work for all the children, and some of the older, like an older child might not want to see the parent, and a younger child may want more contact. And it also, again, depends at the stage of the proceeding. Are you trying to foster and maintain a relationship between a parent and a child? So I think that that's another thing that has to happen, that it becomes more child-focused.